Marlene, are you able to hear yet? Or no? Yeah, Ron, I don't think Marlene's getting audio right now, and our server seems to be down at town hall, so I don't have an ability to email her right now.
Dave, do you have her cell phone number? Text her and tell her to dial in.
Yeah, I don't, Joe. I don't have it on me.
Send her a chat through Zoom.
Well, so because of the Zoom bombing, we've disabled the chat. So I have to figure out a different way to do that. Good ideas.
I have an idea. She's on though, right? With only your,
Yeah.
jot down, Marlene, call me and write down your cell phone number if you don't mind putting that in.
I'm just gonna tell her to log back in.
Yeah, or share your screen and just type it on the screen. Because she's looking.
What? That's what I was gonna do. Thank you.
Go back to the tried and true method.
Yeah, we'll try it that
Thank
way.
God you didn't use Morse code.
Yeah, that would be akin to Indian smoke signals.
Only Ron would be able to understand that.
Yeah.
Darn right.
Dot dot dash dot dash 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 dot.
Da, 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 da.
Joel, you look
Look like you're on vacation.
I'm always on vacation, Joey.
I just don't feel like pulling my laptop out of the dock so the camera can go on.
Where are you tonight, Joel? What lovely beach is that?
Oh,
Uh,
I'm gonna try
well,
again.
I think the beach
I'm gonna try
image
again.
is Barbados, but the shirt is St.
Hold
Bart's.
on.
Nice.
I never figured out how to do that. Otherwise, I would.
Dave, if Marlene still can't hear, write her another note telling her to call into the number.
Right.
Is mine still bad?
Marlene, we can hear you.
My connection's bad or something. Hold on. I'm starting over.
Well, you know, in a pinch, we have our immediate take the minute.
Well, they can do these minutes after the fact. This is all being recorded, so.
Tom didn't pick up on that.
What do you say? What do you say? Anytime anybody tries to volunteer me for something, I pretend I don't hear anything.
That's what you learn in the Army.
That's what I've learned at home.
Both good lessons, huh?
What I learned in the Navy. Navy stands for never again volunteer yourself.
Right.
I saw a Facebook post yesterday. Wife, the husband, I'm ticked at you. Response, again or new? No, still or new?
I ordered flags as a backdrop, but they haven't come yet, so. They say that the book that everybody has in their bookcase is
Is
the power
Ron
book.
talking? I cannot hear Ron.
Marlene,
Wasn't
can I,
saying anything.
What's happening? What?
the folks who are waiting for the hearing to begin, Marlene Kennedy,
I can't hear Ron Clark.
Marlene is our stenographer, and if you watch her during the meeting, it seems like she's not interested. She's as interested in anybody, but she's busy taking the minutes. And she did a great job with it. And she's having a little problem right now, it appears, with her audio. And,
I can't hear Ron Clark.
and
Maybe
so,
log in again. Someone should.
We can hear you though, Marlene. You're coming in okay.
Maybe Dave could send her a message, try
I
logging
can't
in.
hear Ron Bodenson.
Ron, our server's
I can't
down
hear
at town
David.
hall, so I'm unable to send or receive emails right now.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, though. What I would have done.
Ron, if Marlene said she can hear
Can you
you,
send her a chat?
would you?
So I have to disable chat for security reasons.
Yeah,
So
yep.
I
Okay.
think we can do. them
Marlene,
after
can
the
you hear
fact.
me? I thought you said you could.
What, say that again?
I thought you said you could hear me.
She said she could hear Ron Bodenson, so maybe you could pass through a message to Marlene through Ron. Whatever that. Call in on the audio number, I mean, on the video,
I
the audio.
can't hear anything.
I know it.
Can you hear me? No?
No.
Ron, Ron B, say something to Marlene.
Okay. Marlene, did you say you could hear me or not? Apparently not. So Dave, what's the requirement?
Well, we were recording this, so she's gonna have to do them from the recording.
Okay.
Let's see here, do minutes from recording.
2 minutes from recording. How do I do that?
After the fact.
After the
Fact.
fact.
Yeah, just do them later.
Should I just try to log in and log out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, call in. How do I do that? Call in. I'm gonna call in. All right, hold on. No, 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 no.
If you want to just tell her to do them later, we gotta move on.
Hold
I don't
on.
know what's going on.
Maybe give her the number to call in with that piece of paper and that might help.
What's the number?
1 minute, Marlene.
Tell her to hit the arrow next to the mute button at the bottom.
I love all the instructions.
$301.
The meeting number, something, password.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna put I'm not gonna share the participant ID. Or do you want me to do that, Dave?
Just do what you're doing. That's good. Thank you, Tom.
Does she need number to log?
Hey, Tom, could you just type, if that doesn't work, just do them from the recording later on? Then we don't need to.
Our apologies for the late start, everyone.
Why? Hold on.
Of course, if my mother was the stenographer, she could lip read. I used to be able to.
Okay, I get that. I get that. Hold on. All right, hold on a minute. What's going on? Oh, hold on a minute.
All right, Ron, I'll leave it to you. You want to just get started?
Yeah, I think we should. Okay. Before we begin, how do we look with attendees? Do we have any? Everyone on board?
Yeah, I'll run through. So we got Peter Roos, Ron Clark, Tom Berland, Joel Miller, Ron Bodenson, Elliot Hitchcock, Giselle McDowell, Jim Madison, Joe Banofsky, John Mathers.
Okay. So we're missing just Brian, I guess, right?
I believe that's right.
And
And Dr. Hay.
Dr. Hayes, she's an alternate. And strictly because Ron was involved, I'll be receiving him. He was sat in on the first part of this public hearing. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 4th planning meeting of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. Tonight on our agenda is a public hearing that was continued since the 21st of May. It's application 20-08 at 503 Old Toll Road, map 143, lot 20 in the RU1 district. The owner is the Madison Investment Group, LLC, the applicant, Elkwood Behavioral, LLC. And it is a special exception permit to utilize the existing buildings to provide professional outpatient behavioral health services for adults. The facility will be licensed by the Connecticut Department of Health to provide outpatient programming, including individual, group, family, and activity therapies for individuals with low to moderate severity psychiatric, including substance abuse disorders, requiring non-hospital, non-medically managed treatment. Treatment services will not include methadone maintenance. So that is what we are continuing the hearing on. And when we tabled the meeting 2 weeks ago, we had just we're ending apparently the section or the portion where members of the public could ask questions of the applicant. We had a fair number of those, answered apparently most. And then at that point, the attorney for a number of the neighbors, Attorney Rickman, spoke and raised some issues, made some comments that weren't questions, but it was certainly allowable for him to do so. So we broke at that point, and I think if nobody has any objection, a good pickup point might be at this stage to ask the applicant to respond to the comments, if they care to, that Attorney Rickman made. And then, if necessary, have a little dialogue between the two attorneys necessary. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Boy, that was a resounding yes.
Mm.
Yes.
So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant to bring us up to date on what they might have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think I'm going to begin. I'm Attorney Katie Armenia. I appreciate the fact that you are letting us again begin this hearing. I know that this hearing garnered a lot of public interest, and I think it's important for the community to be heard. And it's certainly valuable that the points that they've made, they are going to be neighbors to a facility that's seeking to service the needs of the community. And it's important that they understand what is going to be happening there. I've appreciated the fact that I had an opportunity to speak to Attorney Rickman prior to the first hearing. And then I was able to read the memorandum that he did send to you, and also the supplemental memorandum that was sent yesterday, and have been able to go through that. And I certainly can respond to a few of the salient issues that I think are important, but most particularly relevant to why we're here today. I think that you've made a reminder to all of us that this is an application solely for a special exception permit for a permitted use in a residential zone, specifically RU. And there is an issue, and perhaps maybe we can say in semantics of sort, as to the intended use. And certainly the intersection of that intended use and interplay as it would, we would be dealing with the Department of Public Health. In the last hearing, I did have Mr. Peter Rockles be available. He's again available. He is our expert, and he is in fact the individual who is assisting my client to run its course through the Department of Public Health and the application procedure that must take place. But certainly as far as we are here today, we're trying to determine whether or not this is in fact permitted use as it falls within your sections 5.4D or as the objectors would argue 5.4G. So just in terms of speaking to that issue specifically, I would certainly state that the objectors would have you categorize this use as falling into 5.4G solely based upon the CON application that was filed with the state of Connecticut, which was not a required document or appendage to the application that we had to file with your commission for consideration here today. My client certainly would need to have licensure in place. That is certainly a predicate upon which his business would be run, but I don't believe it's a predicate upon which this application needs to be considered. I would tell you that they want to categorize us into a clinical type setting based upon verbiage that has been used and lexicon that is used commonly with the Department of Public Health, certainly with insurance standards, but by virtue of the definitions provided in our zoning regulations, I would certainly state and again suggest to you that quite clearly my client is looking to afford a service to the community where he is in fact providing a counseling center to folks who have substance abuse issues, whether that's through alcohol or drugs. It is done purely on an outpatient basis. It is not an emergency clinic. They will not be dispensing any form of drugs. It is not a methadone clinic. It is not utilized for emergency services. And any type of medical personnel that will be in attendance would be any medical personnel that would be required by the state of Connecticut through the licensure of the Department of Public Health. So I think that quite understandably, the folks that are taking objection want to surmise and want you to believe that this is going to be a substance abuse clinic where folks are being dropped off, where there may be some further drug use at the property. But in fact, these are folks that have taken the important step towards their recovery, have in fact gone through either an inpatient rehab or an intensive rehab, and are going to be coming here in a therapeutic group setting to seek the service of a counselor who is well-versed in counseling and wants to abide by the state regulations in terms of what he can afford his clients. Most of them will pay a significant amount of money to attend his program. So what's important about that is that in terms of the lexicon with regard to insurance and the state of Connecticut, that they can seek, or Dr. Hinckley can seek reimbursement to cover those services. I did hear a great deal of objection stated and concern about what may happen with regard to value of properties in the adjacent neighborhoods. And I very much appreciate that there have been members of your community who have taken the time to put forward certain studies. However, I don't believe that any of those studies are relevant or in line with what has either been commissioned by either myself or Attorney Rickman. And in fact, that study that was submitted was for Seattle, Washington in the year 2014. So I can't place much stock in that. We don't have the author here today to discuss that. And again, I don't know the facts and circumstances upon which that study was based. So I ask you just to consider how that stands in relation to what we're here today to consider. I also know that Dr. Hinckley spoke at length to you very transparently, and he was willing to take questions from the community members. That was the first opportunity that he had been afforded. And I know that he has spelled out for you a statement of use that is consistent with what has been contained in the application. I want to go back to the argument that the objectors are making, and that is that this is a clinic. And as such, it falls within 5.4G. And as it relates to the proximity of the outbuildings, by virtue of the very metrics of the yardage, it just would not work. We're not claiming we fit that usage. We're claiming we fit 5.4G. And lastly, I know there was great discussion about the use of the property, the term intensive, how it may be used, what the hours may be, and certainly the use of the word intensive, again, relates to requirements the state of Connecticut has in regards to, again, its lexicon regarding to its licensure and also insurance requirements and the hours that in fact clients will have to attend the program on different days in order to take advantage of the services provided. So on that basis, we were asking you again to rely purely upon the statement of use. What my client has expressed very honestly and transparently is his intended use. Certainly not trying to pull a fast one. We were very limited as to information that has been available to us due to the pandemic and COVID. I can't walk into town hall. Had certainly run the application in terms of the procedure and the process through Mr. Anderson. Paid the fee, sent the notice, required signage, tried to reach out to the neighbors. And we find ourselves again here today having the same conversation that we did last week, I would suppose. Lastly, I have taken the time to read certain objections, and some of those issues have been raised by Attorney Rickman in regards to folks' consideration of how placement of this center may somehow impede upon or threaten the safety of their neighborhood. I'm sensitive to that. I'm a mother myself. However, I think it is contrary to common sense, common decency, to somehow extrapolate out the folks that would attend the center somehow impose a danger to our community or would seek to try to threaten the neighborhood that is adjacent and behind, or try to seek out children in that neighborhood for any other purpose that maybe people have expressed. So again, I don't want to really spend too much time on those issues, but just to assure the folks that are concerned, these are folks that are coming to guard their privacy, and they've taken an opportunity to better the lives for themselves and are actually hoping that other folks would support them in that endeavor. So I hope that addresses a lot of what the objectors' concerns were. I know that Attorney Rickman has spoke at length, and I'm certain will again about the Con application. And I would certainly have Mr. Rockholz, he's as panelist here, available to answer those specific questions because that is within his realm of expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie, make sure I just understood one thing. Did you say that the state health department regulates the hours of operation?
No, I think if I mentioned hours of operation, again, that we were having a discussion in the last hearing, there was a concern that was stated and it was absolutely valid as to what the hours and duration were. I think that was a part of it, but the other part I think that you're referring to is that there is an intensive outpatient program. There's an acronym for that Mr. Rockholtz can explain. And intensive is defined by their regulatory scheme. And it has to do with the amount of hours that one participates in this program that coincides with the licensure requirement. I would ask Peter to further explain that because he's an expert in that field, but I hope that answers the basic part of your question.
Okay, well, it sounds like this, well, yeah, got it.
Okay.
Before I turn it over, I would ask if any other commission members have questions, what Katie just went over. None? Okay, could be appropriate or then to give Attorney Rickman an opportunity not to rebut, but to comment and present information he has, and then we'll let Katie and the applicant come back again, then we'll go forward from there. Is that fair to all the parties involved?
Sure.
Okay. Attorney Rickman?
He's as an attendee, Ron, so I have to identify him. Hold on one second. Attorney Rickman, yep, there you go.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, good, wonderful. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond. Attorney Armenia said that she would like you to consider the statement of use that was submitted. And the statement of use, which Commissioner Clark read, specifically says that the facility will be licensed by the Connecticut Department of Health. So the statement of use specifically identifies licensing by the state. So what is that licensing? So there's no dispute that the licensing that is going to be submitted is as a psychiatric outpatient clinic. That's what was submitted in the sworn statement to the state, that it's a psychiatric outpatient clinic. Now, Katie, she talks about characterization, that we're not characterizing. I'm getting the information I have from the sworn statements of Dr. Hinckley. That's where it's coming from. And so that is what he's going to be licensed as. It's going to be a licensed clinic. There's no factual dispute on that issue. So when you go to the Connecticut statutes and regulations, what you see, in fact, there is a psychiatric outpatient clinic. So there is a license for exactly what he is applying for. So I don't quite see how we're arguing it's not a clinic, because that is what it's going to be. It only exists by virtue of the licensing that the state gives it, and that licensing is as a clinic. So there's no characterization. You hear the old saying, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, well, here it's calling itself a duck. Okay, that's what it is. And so as a clinic, if you just read the plain language of your regulations, it has to meet the setback requirement, and both the staff comments and Katie herself have acknowledged that it doesn't. So that's it. There's no discretion. There's no anything. It's not a permitted use. And all of the effort to submit things that say it's really not a clinic is just double talk. That's all it is. It's the applicant that is intending to recharacterize his clinic as something else. Okay, so that's really the whole. It's that simple. Now, even if you decided it's not a clinic, which I'm frankly astounded that could happen. But if that were the case, then that's not the end of it, because then you would still have to take into account the effects on the neighborhood and the community, and the entire, at least 23 of the 27 homes in the community are flatly against it. And of course, other objections have been filed, for legitimate reasons. Now, there was a statement last time during the public hearing that there is no evidence of negative impact on property values. That was what was presented. And so naturally, I said, well, is that true? So, we looked at studies, and both the study in the source that was cited in the newspaper article, I'm sure we've all read, and the study that was submitted by another neighbor who's a healthcare professional, show in fact that there are negative impacts, anywhere between 3 or 8% when it's not a methadone clinic. So there is empirical evidence of a negative impact on property values. So I just, we asked that this not be approved. And I think that the other significant point to be made is that we need to keep in mind, this is not a situation of Dr. Hinckley's former practice, Positive Choices, just moving. This is a new company. It requires a new certificate of need. They're getting new licensing, and it's in a different zoning district, a rural zoning district. It's just not appropriate, and it's barred, and it should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Rickman. And before we kind of move on with the normal procedure, would you like to make a comment, Kate?
Are you referring to me?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you
Okay, sure.
back on the normal public hearing track. I thought I'd give you a chance to reply to.
Sure. Two things. Number one, I just wanted to address specifically the comment made by Attorney Rickman regarding clinic. By virtue of your very definitions, I don't believe, again, I read this last time out loud, that the definition itself specifically states medical outpatient clinic, a facility which provides medical services to patients who present non-life-threatening problems, but who need or want the convenience of immediate medical attention. So by this very definition, that's not what we are, or what my client is looking to do. Secondly, in regards to the empirical evidence, I mean, you all can consider the weight of that. That's certainly within your discretion. But it's one of a number of mischaracterizations or uses of information that we take issue with. There was, in the supplemental objection that was filed yesterday, a reference to a physician who signed a document, and they drew the parallel that somehow that doctor had a relationship to my client. And you've received a letter today from the owner counsel stating emphatically that's not the case. Right. So again, credibility comes into play here, and I'm not suggesting anybody is being untruthful. I'm just stating that there are a lot of assumptions being made without a lot of fact checking. And so the real source of what is going to be happening at this facility, clinic, center, whatever you'd like to call it, again, semantics, is in fact what my client states. We recognize that the neighbors are concerned, but they won't tell us what their concerns are, except that they are fearful that the people who are coming to visit the facility are somehow going to be of the sort that are going to cause them harm, or that the stigma attached to the facility is somehow going to cause them to lose value in their properties. And I don't know that should be the weight of the consideration of how this application is handled. I know that Peter Rockholz wanted to address, as the expert, the assertion that there is empirical evidence regarding the value and how the facility's placement may have a detrimental effect. Would you permit him to speak on that?
In my opinion, that would be appropriate.
Okay. So Dave, is he in there?
Yep, he's right there.
Peter, are
He's
you
ready
in
to go.
here?
Yes,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you and I can see you.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I introduced myself last time. I guess I'm here to try to address some of the translation of particular terms between how Madison Zoning Commission defines, I guess in particular, clinic, and how it's being connected to the meaning of clinic, the term clinic with the Department of Public Health licensure, which is very different. You're very clear, as Attorney Armenia just mentioned, about what clinic means in Madison, and it's pretty much the way it's meant across the state, that it has to do with subacute, urgent medical, physical health care, including walk-in centers, including things like places like Middlesex Hospital's urgent care and walk-in clinic, and the CVS Minute Clinic in Guilford. And that's pretty much how that's understood. And I think your definition pretty much makes that distinction. It really doesn't talk about general health care or psychiatric care. So let me talk very specifically, because I have intimate knowledge about the psychiatric outpatient clinic license with the Department of Public Health. And this is not the primary license that Dr. Hinckley is seeking. He's seeking licensure as a substance use disorder clinic, outpatient. Because clients who come to treatment for those disorders, 80% also have a co-occurring mental health condition, are now required by the state to also have a license as a psychiatric outpatient clinic in order to treat those individuals. Unfortunately, those are two separate licenses. Now, when I was a deputy commissioner at the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services in the early 2000s, I brought together the folks from my department with the folks with the licensing division of Department of Public Health to try to resolve this by combining the two into one set of licensing standards for behavioral health services. The first thing that we immediately noticed with that was that this term psychiatric outpatient clinic was an artifact of the 60s. It's a term that is not any longer used. It's not used by the state. I did a Google search. It's not even used really in the field. If you search psychiatric outpatient clinic, you're not going to get too many results. The other case, I think, where there's a clear case that this fits in outpatient medical is that, in office medical, is that there are two things. One, the licensure with the state of Connecticut is that it licenses healthcare facilities. Now, in your definition, it says healthcare facilities. In addition, the term healthcare and healthcare professional has been studied by the Connecticut General Assembly and repeatedly refers to individuals and facilities that are licensed by the state to provide healthcare services, and that includes psychologists, licensed psychiatric social workers, and the like. So clearly, for those reasons, I think that the debate really is whether, from my perspective, we were looking at this facility fitting into office medical or office professional, certainly not hospital, sanitarium, or clinic. That's not even that's a tangential semantic connection between two disparate sets of definitions. But clearly, I think the debate lies within these other two definitions, clearly. I think there was mention of partial hospital program that Dr. Hinckley was providing. That has nothing to do with hospital in terms of insurance companies. It's a level of care. It's a definition of a type of a service that involves 4 or more hours a week of counseling services, individual, group, family, and so forth, that Dr. Hinckley is proposing to provide. I know there's a lot of concerns about this being similar to drug treatment programs that are residential. This is not a residential program. I'm curious about what study was mentioned that of the reduced property values. I've not seen that. I suspect it's detox and residential programs. It's certainly not a program like this. As I mentioned last time, I've set up a number of programs exactly like Dr. Hinckley's proposing, 3 of them in Fairfield County, 1 here in my home town of Greenwich, Connecticut. And people don't even know it's there. So I'd be happy to provide any further clarification I can on the terminology and help in any way I can.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I guess at this stage, I'd see if any of the commission members have questions they want to ask.
Ron, I've got 2.
Okay, Ron, go ahead.
Attorney Armenia or Dr. Hinckley, will you be providing any medical services in this office?
Hey, Dr. Mike, you just need to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, no, this is,
Okay.
none of
Okay.
it is medical.
And how will clients secure services there? Will they walk in or do they have to make an appointment in advance?
They have to be phone screened and then given an appointment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? None? John Mathers? You have to
Remove
un- yeah.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure I'm following the line of argument here. In the licensing application, the licensing is for a psychiatric outpatient clinic. It uses the word clinic. And as I understand Mr. Rickman's argument, clinic is not permitted in the current zoning. If I understand Ms. Armenia's argument, and also Mr. Rockholt's, the term clinic is an outdated, it's on the form for the licensing, but you're saying that's an outdated term. Am I understanding that correctly? That the statement of use is not a clinic, but the word clinic is in the application because it's an outdated term. Did I get that correctly?
Yes, so there are multiple licenses that need to be acquired. The first is for substance use disorder facility, which is the primary purpose of the facility. The reason for also having a psychiatric outpatient license is that it's required because most of the individuals also have a diagnosable mental condition, depression, anxiety, minor things, but it has to be obtained. Those regulations were written back in the 80s and 90s. The term clinic is no longer associated with psychiatric services of this type. It's an artifact. And I tried my best to get rid of it. I was in the process of it because it didn't apply. It certainly doesn't apply to interpreting into what you have as the definition of clinic, which is a medical and urgent care clinic. So yes, it's not used. And as I said, if you Google psychiatric outpatient clinic, you're not going to get any hits. It's just not a term that's used anymore.
If I could make a comment there too, John. My history of working with Hartford Healthcare, they own a number of IOPs and PHPs all over the state, and not a single one would be referred to as a clinic, but every one of them has this same license, which requires the word clinic on application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it for you, John? Any more questions from you?
No, sir.
Anyone else on the commission have a question? Hearing none, I think it would be,
Just briefly, I just want to let you know that Attorney Rickman had his hand up. I'm not sure if that's an appropriate time for him to ask another question, but it's my, Joel has a question though. Joel's raising his hand now.
Joel Miller, please.
So, thanks, Ron. So there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of interpretation on the elements of the application, that may be headed as a clinic. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to really understand, where those hairs may be split, where the nuances are, where the differences are. So I would ask, is there something specific in the Connecticut Public Health Code that defines what a clinic is, what an outpatient clinic is?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's used in a couple places. It's used in veterinary clinics. It's used in urgent care clinics, and it's used in methadone clinics, and that's it.
Let me try clarifying that. Is there a particular passage or paragraph or section number in the Public Health Code that defines what an outpatient clinic is?
I can provide you with that citation. I did kind of look it up this afternoon, which is why I came up with that response. But I can provide you with the citation.
Our zoning regulations, however, and I'll make this a question, you don't use the word outpatient with the word clinic. And it might be appropriate, notwithstanding, I think that's a good question. What is the definition of the word clinic itself? That's what's in our zoning regulations. And maybe that's an appropriate bit of information to have in the record.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ron. But the discussion is around what is in the certificate of need application, and that's why I was looking to see if there was something, relative to that. In the application is for an outpatient clinic as it's headed, not necessarily as the applicant says it's intended. So I was looking for something in the Connecticut Public Health Code that clarifies that. While I'm sitting here, I just, I'm looking up stuff myself, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to read what I find. That's why I'm asking, the applicant if they're aware of it. And I don't even know if what I'm looking at is current. But I'm looking at 19-13-D45 under the Public Health Code.
Yeah, I understand. I think your question is an excellent one. And anxious as you are to possibly get some clarification on answering it. I was just kind of supplementing it, if you will, not replacing it.
So if I can just respond to that briefly, yes, that's the licensing section for psychiatric outpatient clinics, which is Dr. Hinckley will be requesting, and it gives a very detailed description of what's required in order for that type of a facility to operate. If you try to square that with the Madison Zoning Commission's definitions of clinic, which are provided, which talks about subacute urgent medical care. It talks about 24/7 availability. There's nothing in your definition that is anywhere similar to the definition and the description of the licensing requirements in the Public Health Code.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions from the commission? Attorney Rickman wishes to say something or possibly ask a question.
Yeah, his hand up. Go ahead, Attorney Rickman.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to have the opportunity to respond to some of Mr. Ruckels's statements. and one of the commissioner's questions, this concept of outdated artifact in terms of terminology. So, you know, we're governed by a body of laws and regulations. And what we're talking about is the current regulations and the licensing regulations are what's at issue. And they're, in fact, the current licensing regulations are as a psychiatric outpatient clinic. Okay, so it's not antiquated because that's what the law is right now. It may be antiquated in terms of what doctors say, but in terms of the laws and the licensing, that's what's in effect right now. So it's not antiquated. In terms of definitions in our supplemental objection, we actually cite to the regulation and quote it as to what a clinic is. And I think it's exactly, you know, it's clearly what's being proposed because that's the license he's trying to seek. In terms of the definitions in the zoning regulations, I thought, Commissioner Clark, you made a very good point, which is what is being referred to by the applicant is the defined term outpatient clinic, medical. Now, first of all, I think that that definition does easily encompass this situation. However, as you pointed out, that's not the term that is used in 5.4G. It's actually just small c clinic. And you said, well, what does that mean? Well, I think that what that means is that it's not limited to just what is defined here as an outpatient clinic medical. It is any type of clinic or hospital or sanatorium. Those are the words that are used. And this licensing that is being obtained is exactly as that, as a clinic. So I think that's very relevant. This is a very small point, but just because Katie kind of, you know, made a pointed comment to me about it, about Dr. Korek signing the application. You have to keep in mind that when this application was filed by the applicant didn't exist. There was no such company in Connecticut. And so when I looked at this application, I was concerned about that it was filed by a non-existent entity. And as you recall from last time, they ran out and filed and got the company formed the afternoon before our last hearing. In addition, Mr. Rockholtz made the point that for this type of facility, it has to be overseen by a licensed medical doctor. He says that in his comments, a licensed psychiatrist. And the owner of the property is an investment group, Madison Investment Group. I have no way of knowing who the members of that group are. So when I saw a doctor on the application and saw that that doctor had a controlled substance registration, my client said to me, we need clarification on what that's all about. And that's why that's in my letter. And if it was clarified, that's fine. But it was a very reasonable concern that my clients raised. So I just want to make that point. In terms of the studies, all I can tell you is that every study I've looked at, and certainly the ones that are in this record, showed a diminution in property values. So as far as I can see, that's the only evidence that's before the commission. But I don't even think you ever get there because this is so clearly a clinic that I think that's the end of it. But, you know, that's your decision.
Can I?
Ron, if it's appropriate, can I just make a comment that I think would be
kind of wandering off here, but yes, doctor, and I would like Katie to make a 30 maybe comment, and then I'd like to get on with the normal course of event.
Sure. You know, if I were to simply say qualitatively and quantitatively what happens in my office currently and what will happen in the offices at Old Toll Road, they're virtually the same. The only difference with this licensing is the fact that the amount of hours the clients will be allowed to be there with insurance, which does require a different licensing. So as far as the notion of what is happening there, it's no different than a therapist office. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear for you guys.
Thank you, doctor. Katie, you want to close the door on this?
I just wanted, I wanted Dr. Hinckley to just describe that. So thank you.
Okay. So, again, any questions at this point from the commission? We've had a lot of, we were ending the portion of the public hearing where the public got to ask questions 2 weeks
We
ago.
have sorry to interrupt you. I have a question
But I
from Joel.
was gonna say, I think we may have garnered, some more questions from the audience. So I think it would make sense to see if there are any and let them ask their questions. Again, we're not asking for positions at this point. Opposed or in favor, just legitimate questions, please.
Ron, I'm sorry. Joel did have a question I think he wanted to ask first.
Go ahead, Joel.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Ron. So this one's back to Dr. Hinckley. So I want to make sure I understand the statement you just made, where you're talking about the licensure is a reflection of the hours that these people would spend in your services. Does that mean a scenario? Does this scenario fit what you were talking about? So someone's insurance allows them to be in a therapy, and they might have 12 one-hour sessions, therefore 12 hours. Or if it's a more intense therapy, and I'm using 12 arbitrarily, maybe that number increases to 16 or something like that. Is that what you mean when you talk about the hours that they're there?
Right. Currently, right now, I run groups in my office, and those groups are limited to being 1 hour of group work a day. And what this license will allow is that number per day for an individual who needs it to go to 3 or 4 hours of group work in a day. And that's how it would, yeah.
So with that, we'll turn it over. I will say one additional thing is that please state your name and address before you ask a question. With that, I'll turn it over to Dave, who's actually the moderator of the Zoom meeting.
Sure. So if any of the attendees have a question, please raise your hand. And if you're on a telephone, you can dial *9 and I can unmute you in that way. And so if folks have questions, I'll just call on them as they appear and unmute you to talk. Okay, I see C. Balkin has his hand up. You can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Bork Balkin. I am a neighbor at 20 Northwood Road. I am probably the most adjacent neighbor, and we have been living here for 20 years. And even though we liked the woods that we had before the preschool, we were quite happy with the preschool as a neighbor, and also with the Our Lady of Mercy facility that was there later. I have been listening, actually, when I first became aware of the application, I actually thought that this was a worthy cause and something that if the neighborhood needed or the town needed it, was probably a service that could be provided. I got a little bit more confused when I became aware of the state application, which had very, very clear discrepancies from the town application. And I must say that at the last town hall meeting, I really got concerned when I heard all three supporters of the application only talk about the intent of what was going to happen. Now, as background, I've been responsible for DEA applications for radioactive materials, for controlled substances with the DEA, for ethics and research. And I cannot understand how an application could be considered when the intent of the applicant is considered and not, we will do this, we will not do that. And I don't even know for myself what to think, because there's nothing stated in facts that I can make a judgment on. So my request really is to say, what is the application in certainty with a very clear statement? We ask for this, we will clearly not do that.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, for those who follow, I prefer at this stage, not that what was said is not registered, but we were in the question mode at the moment. So does anybody out in the audience have any other questions, Dave?
I don't see any hands up at the moment.
Okay.
I
know
do now.
you do? Okay.
Yes. Mike Catalano. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, I'm Michael Catalano from 4 Northwood Road. Question for Dr. Hinckley or Mr. Buckholz. What is required to obtain any additional license to have medically assisted treatment with Suboxone, even methadone?
Yeah, I can answer that, and I think it's an important question. So in order to utilize medications such as Suboxone, which is buprenorphine, naloxone, or methadone, there's a separate category of licensing required, which is called chemical maintenance. This, Dr. Hinckley is not seeking that license.
Is it? Am I still on? Okay. I guess my question is, what would it take to obtain that license if at a future date it would become an interesting feature to add to the services?
Sure, another good question. It would require an application to the Department of Public Health Licensing Division. It would require a significant increase in meeting additional requirements, pharmacy requirements, nursing requirements, ability to do physical exams on site. It's a significantly greater increase in resources that would have to be applied. And in order to use methadone would never ever be considered here. I don't believe. But for a medication like Suboxone, which is a medication that is prescribed out of local doctors' offices all over the country, including in Madison, Connecticut. But it would require an additional license, and the Department of Public Health would have to come out and do a site visit and approve that.
Thank you.
We have an additional question from Jen Washburn.
Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Jen. Might need to unmute yourself.
Thank you for that technical help that was needed. This is Jen Washburn. I'm 68 Northwood Road, one of the neighbors. I wanted to ask if there'll be drug testing done on site. Can you unmute? I can't hear the answer.
Mike, I can answer that. Yeah, I think.
Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's required of any substance use disorder treatment facility, whether it's outpatient, inpatient, or otherwise. It is required, and it would be provided through a contract with a certified laboratory.
Does that answer your question, Jan?
I may have missed one part of the answer, but so if it is indeed done on site, those would be actual medical tests done. So that is a medical facility. I may have missed one of the sentences though.
No.
Well, it's a laboratory procedure. It's not done by. It doesn't have to be done by medical staff.
And the test actually may be sent out for whatever results. You're just what do you do it? Collecting urine, and that's sometimes the test is as similar as what you'd buy at CVS to use in your own home.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. Anybody else, Dave?
Yes. Whitney, go ahead, Whitney. And I'm sorry, I'm remiss into reminding people to please state their name and address for our record when you talk. I apologize for that.
Of course. So this is Whitney's husband, Daniel Orlick, live at 20 Hidden Springs Road in Madison, which is the street just right off of Northwood. I guess this is a question for Mr. Rockwell. In terms of the use of the word clinic and discussions today about finding information on Google, just a quick Google search stumbles upon UConn and their psychiatric health services. And I'll be quick. The Adult Psychiatric Outpatient Services Clinic at 10 Talcott North Road in Farmington offers evaluation, so on and so forth. The clinic is handicap accessible, et cetera, and we are therefore one of the larger public sector psychiatric clinics in the state. Specifically speaking about outpatient psychiatric services, with the definition or the use of the word clinic, I just want to know if he was aware of that and how that fits into his statements that clinic is a non-used, outdated term.
Sure, yeah, of course. Yeah, you will find a few of those around the country that if you do a full Google search, it does still appear on when it refers to being provided through a medical health center hospital system. They still use that term because it's being provided as a medical facility service. And yes, you will probably find a random on occasion use of that term there. But in terms of the general public use, in terms of what Dr. Hinckley is providing, I think you'd be hard pressed to find that term used anymore.
But just as a follow-up, I mean, it is not a facility from somewhere across the country. It is our state university hospital system, very local, in fact. So just wanted to.
I'm very familiar with that facility, and it is a hospital-based facility, right?
Thank you for the question. Anybody else, Dave?
Yeah, we have Rob next. And Rob, I'm going to not pronounce your last name correctly, so I won't try. I apologize.
Hi, this is Megan Chesney at 12 Northwood Road. I would just like to understand, a lot of the talk in the documents that I've read is talking about an IOP and a PHP for this type of facility. Can somebody explain what a partial hospitalization program is?
Yeah, yes, I'd be happy to do that. So this is where we need to interpret between three sets of languages: the language of zoning, the language of regulations and licensure, and the language of insurance companies is important. I'm fluent in all three of those, and I can help with this. So IOP refers to a level of outpatient care that's intensive outpatient program that provides 3 or more hours per day on 3 or more days per week. It's not a term that's used in licensure, but in order to provide that service, you have to have the multiple licenses that Dr. Hinckley is seeking. IOP is used by insurance companies as a purchasable service. It's a bundled a number of counseling sessions that it purchases on a per day basis. Partial hospital program, PHP, is very similar. It's also a term that's used by insurance companies. It's not used by the licensing Department of Public Health. It's solely a insurance company terminology that talks about additional hours of counseling services beyond the IOP. So it would be typically 4 or more hours per day and perhaps 5 or 6 days per week. And that's really what those two mean. They really are not.
That sounds very intensive. Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for your question. Dave?
No other hands at the moment.
No other hands at the moment? And any other questions from the commission? Okay, at this point, what we do is we will move to,
Sorry, I have Joel one more time. Joel, go ahead.
no, Joel's not on my screen. I apologize, Joel. Don't take it personally. You're one slide over.
Ron, I'm used to you blocking me. That's okay. So yes, it's me again. I want to ask the applicant a couple follow-up questions from the questions that, a couple of questions that were just raised. So the first one, I think Mr. Catalano raised a really great question, and actually this question is probably more for Dave than the applicant. So Mr. Catalano was asking about what would have to happen for this facility to turn around and administer medications or medical treatment like methadone or Suboxone. So my question is, if they file for an application to do that, Dave, would that constitute a change in use from their current application? And then would it be subject to a special exception modification and public hearing again?
Yeah, I would say probably not unless there was a specific condition of approval requiring that. You know, I imagine with any physician's office, medical office, there's probably a number of licensures that are needed, and certainly they don't come back to zoning every time they need a license. So unless the commission imposed that as a condition of approval, I don't think that would necessarily trigger that automatically. That answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it does, and I think it pretty much nullifies my other question. So I'm set for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Joel. Assuming there are no other questions from the commission, we've reached the stage where we look to the public to give their thoughts about the application, pro and con. What I would ask, the public to be aware of is, I know that many of you have written letters, and they're all in the file. They're part of the record. All of the commission members have seen them and read them. So in the essence of time, it is not required, I'm just mentioning, it's not required to reread your letter for it to get into records or into our heads. That's already been accomplished. And I say that only in the essence of time. But I am going to ask for those who wish to speak to state theirs. First, I'll ask for those who may be in favor of the application to speak. And when those folks are done, then I will ask for those who are opposed to the application to speak. And again, I say, and Attorney Rickman, if you disagree with me, certainly say so. You represent a number of these people. That it is really unnecessary to take the time to read those letters to us because we've seen them and digested them. Is that, are you agreeable to that, Attorney Rickman? Or do you agree with that?
Attorney Armenia.
Oh,
what you're referring to?
Excuse me, Attorney Armenia. No,
That's fine. Just as it relates to the applicant, I mean, certainly by the very nature of our services, we're not going to impede on our client's confidentiality. So we have submitted some letters of support, and those are in the record. So I would just remind the commission of those.
Yeah, but I was talking mainly about the neighbors who were represented by the Northwood folks.
Sure.
Taking the time to write. They don't have to read the letter to us tonight for us to get the message. It's been duly noted and digested. That's all.
Thank you.
So Ron, just to reiterate, you would ask for folks that want to speak in favor of the application first?
If any want to speak in favor of the application, now is the time to do so.
Okay. So I don't have any attendees at this time that wish to speak in favor.
Okay. We did have a couple of letters, but they are in the file.
Correct.
Now I will ask anyone who may be opposed to the application to raise their hand to Dave and certainly have the opportunity to speak. This is your time to do that.
All right, I'm going to allow Jean Fitzgerald to talk. Go ahead, Jean.
Hello, my name is Jean Fitzgerald, 25 Northwood Road. I want to follow up on something I had spoken at the last meeting, my concern that everything is so vague, definitions are so vague. Nobody seems to be able to give a definite answer, even tonight with the experts, self-proposed experts. There were words like, I don't believe at that time, I don't think. But one of the things that just struck me, and I want to follow up on what Joel asked, I find it hard to believe that this board could actually give approval for a clinic, and then the clinic could change its services at any point, get another certification from the state, not have to notify the town. And then, Dave, you clarified that for Joel, correct?
Yes, the reason I answered that way is because I don't understand the licensure requirement of public health facilities in general.
Yeah.
And I know
No,
that this
I'm with you.
commission,
Yeah, I'm with you.
grant
So-
approvals.
Right, and neither do I, Dave, but I think the point you make in answering Joel's question is important. So what you approved tonight does not mean that that is the end of what that clinic is going to be doing. That at any point, they could make changes to what they have asked this committee for in zoning. So that's a concern to me. The confidentiality of clients, which I have said at the last meeting, I believe in, is also problematic for the town. There's no way for the town to monitor what is going on at that clinic after the approval is given, based on what is right, that the clients have confidentiality, that they have the right to have privacy. And I find it very difficult for a town to be able to allow something like this clinic in so close to a residential area and not be able to monitor it in any way after what happens here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Next, Dave, is
Bree Hardy.
hello, Bree.
Or Laura.
Hey, good evening. This is actually her husband, Matt Alardi, 26 Michelle Lane, Madison. I agree with the previous person that just spoke. I'm against this for its proximity to residential areas. You can argue about property values in either direction. I don't see how it would do anything but hurt property value. And also the ability not to have any control about change of business use down the road, I think is a very scary idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Dave?
Yep, Jen Washburn.
Hi, it's Jen Washburn again, 68 Northwood Road. Yeah, one thing that I just wanted to make mention of folks on the committee that when they're trying to think this through is if you haven't been up to the property, I really would encourage you to do so. I don't know if this will go on to a further meeting. When we say this property is close to neighbors, I happen to be further along the road. It doesn't impact me as personally, but I did take the time and to really do my research, go to the property site, go into the parking lot, go look where the playground was. It is so immediately close to some of my neighbors. When you stand in the quote unquote playground, which of course wouldn't remain a playground, I would say it would be a 1 minute walk into 30 seconds. Yeah, 30 seconds into one of the neighbors, probably a minute to another. I can think of a couple other neighbors and it's unobstructed. So whether it's alcohol, drug clinic, whatever we're going to call this thing, this property is very special in that it looks like it's in a businessy type of area, but unless you physically intimately get to that space, it is so close. So I'm just trying to, visually paint a picture for when you're considering this. And I thank everybody for their time tonight and their thoughtfulness.
Jen, thank you. And speaking for myself, I'm very familiar, I've looked at it and familiar with it. And I would think that many, if not all of the commission members have been up there one way, manner, shape or form to look at it. We understand your point. So thanks for that. Dave?
Jack Wagner.
Hello, Jack.
Jack, you may need to unmute yourself. There you go.
And thank you. And speaking for myself, I'm very familiar, I've looked at it and familiar with it. I would think that many, if not all of the commission members have been up there one way, manner, shape or form to look at it.
Jack, are you, we're hearing just feedback.
Jack Wagner?
Yes, this is Jack Wagner, 29 Strathmore Lane, Madison, Connecticut. I am the original owner.
Jack, we're unable to hear you at the moment. Ron, I think I'll come back to Jack.
David, can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Okay. Right. I was the original owner of 12 Northwood Road. There has been an ongoing debate over this property since we bought the property. Originally, we were the second owner on Northwood Road. I support what Jen just said in that the backyards of these homes are all very close. Plus, there's a public path that goes from Northwood Road right through the middle of the old daycare facility. This is a very valuable neighborhood. There's a tightness of the neighborhood that is unequaled in Madison. And I would urge the commission to understand the impact of this on that neighborhood when it appears to be a ploy to gather more business. And I am not against someone increasing their business, but look at the impact on the existing community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jack.
Szczesny again. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Rob Chesney, 12 Northwood Road. I live in the house that Jack sold to us. Our property goes directly against this proposed clinic. We moved here 6 years ago when it was a daycare. Certainly, we would not have moved here if it was a drug clinic like is being proposed. And my wife and I have already made the decision, if this goes through, that the next day our house will be up for sale. So if that doesn't prove the effect on property values, I don't know what does. And I would just urge the Planning and Zoning Commission to think of this from my standpoint, having 3 young daughters so close to such a facility. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Ken. Ken, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Maria McNeil. I live at 10 Northwood Road, so I echo the comments of the previous folks that spoke. My house is actually directly behind this facility. I can actually see right into the back from my bedroom, so it would directly impact us. So we're definitely opposed to having this facility in here, especially with the unknowns. Like I mentioned last time, I was concerned about the loitering in the back, but also just other decisions that haven't been made yet. So I just wanted to let you know that we're definitely opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Emily Trenchard. Go ahead, Emily. Emily, there you go.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for the time. 87 Mending Wall Circle. I just, just to reiterate what everyone has said, I just find it just really hard to believe that you guys can't find a more appropriate facility for this type of treatment center. I mean, up and down 79, I see for lease, for rent buildings, multiple buildings, in town that would just be more appropriate, closer to public transportation and so on. So I just need a better understanding of, why the push to come into a residential community that is, adamantly opposed to, to what you're looking to do here.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Christine Avino.
Hi, this is Christine Avino. I live on 121 Summer Hill Road in Madison. So echoing the other statements that have been made already, I am opposing due to the lack of control to govern the use of the facility by the zoning department after this application is approved. I also think that based on the previous arguments made tonight and in the previous meeting, this would be considered a clinic. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
We have Cork Balkan.
Hi, so this time it's Colleen. So Colleen Balkan, 20 Northwood Road. So in general, I support the idea of, a counseling facility. I have know people with substance abuse. I know people with minor to moderate psychiatric issues. And, I think people helping them is a positive thing. What I'm concerned about, my husband's concerned about is, as he stated, sort of the vagueness of it. And, we kind of hope that there's something put in place with respect to, not allowing things to be changed without coming back to the facility. When the preschool was approved, one of the things I was also concerned about changes for that. So could it turn into a daycare where suddenly it was open all summer? Could they add other things? And I was very pleased that the commission put in a lot of, sort of restrictions in their approval that helped assuage our concerns about, what could happen after this goes through and things could change. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
I don't see any hands up at the moment, Ron.
Okay.
No, we have one. Martha McCran.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Martha McCran. I live at 16 Northwood Road, right next to the Chesney, so the next house over. Our backyard is less than a minute walk to the back of the facility. And I am also opposed, echo all of the sentiments that have been said before me. Just multiple concerns. It really sort of changes the nature of our neighborhood and our backyard. When we moved here 11 years ago, we spent a lot of time talking to people about the fact that it was a daycare, not a daycare, but a preschool facility that was always closed by 5 or 6 at the latest, did not have summer hours, very sort of different nature to a business that's going to be open later and year round. So that is certainly one concern. Another concern is, of course, we have a direct path from our backyard through that parking lot across to Roberts, where a lot of the neighborhood children and even neighborhood adults, rather than driving their cars, will walk through that area, and that kind of changes the nature of this neighborhood as well. Lastly, with the fact that it's a clinic and the vagueness of what will be allowed going forward, I'm certainly not opposed to healthcare treatment at all. I'm a healthcare provider myself. I'm very sensitive to mental health care issues, and I really think that all of these things are very worthy and have their place. However, as with any business, as it becomes successful, there's always the nature to want to expand and improve. And if the services are not restricted by any license, then that's certainly a concern of ours, I think, in this household.
Thank you very much. This is the second time that path came up, and I just might ask a question. I don't know whether anybody has the answer. Is this a right-of-way? Is this a legal right-of-way across the property or not?
Go ahead.
I've actually reached out to Attorney Florentine to ask him that question. That concerns me because obviously, if there's use of the property, we haven't been made aware of that. I'm going to speak to Attorney Florentine, but a title search would reveal that.
Yeah, Mr. Wagner earlier just mentioned it, and You know, I took a lot of shortcuts when I was younger, a kid going to the store. And I don't think they were rights of way. They were just established paths that we took and nobody.
Yeah.
But in this case, I just curious if that was a legitimate right or not. Okay, thank you for that. Dave?
We have two more hands up. JMC Creary.
Yeah, this is Jason, and I live at 5 Buck Hill Road, about a mile down Route 80. You know, I guess my objection is that, you know, I moved to this area because it is a very residential area. I assumed that, you know, businesses in this area, or that particular location was zoned residential for a reason. I think that if there needs to be a better reason than what's been presented to change that zoning. I'm also friends with people that live over on Northwood. We do visit over there regularly. And I can second how close that location is to those residential areas. Maybe harder to tell this time of year with the leaves on the trees and everything, but in the wintertime, those properties are extremely close to that property. And I am definitely opposed to changing the zoning from the residential zoning that it is right now.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, Dr. Rashida Parks.
Hi, this is Rashida Parks from 34 Hidden Springs Road. I join everybody into two things: the vagueness of what will be allowed in this facility. And the second one is a little bit more personal. We moved here 4 years ago. It took us only 21 hours driving to get to Connecticut. It was job related, and we spent a lot of time and energy into choosing a residential area that offered what we were looking for ourselves, my husband and I, and the kids. An incident that happened a couple of years ago, our 16-year-old, we told him to use the public path that Colleen mentioned, and we dropped him at Robertson. We said, you are gonna walk back home because you're 16 and you're not gonna be just driven anywhere you want. So he did, and he got lost. The fact that he got lost, and ended up in one of the backyards, that's not something, while he's a part of the neighborhood and everybody looked out after him and everybody welcomed him, if it was a stranger that ends up in my backyard, that is impacting my privacy, possibly my safety, not necessarily in this case, but it's just the fact that if somebody walking in my backyard, I will be very, very concerned if I don't know who that is. So we don't want to end up in those situations. While the case of my kids, that it was handled because he's part of the neighborhood. If there's a woman or a man, I don't know who it is, and ends up in my backyard. We're dealing with a really, really, I'm not going to use legal or emotional or whatever it is, but I'm supporting my neighbors in that area. I'm the least impacted because I live in the far end of the cul-de-sac, like Jan, but on the other side. But I'm in support of my neighbors that are really adjacent within seconds of that facility. And if it troubles you within your own house, then it's a major concern. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all what you're doing to support our community.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate that.
All right, the hand that's up is Carter Elledge.
Yes, hi, it's Jane Cardarelli, 36 Sheffield Lane, Madison. I'm a realtor in town. I'm stunned. I've read all the documentation on this case. I'm very worried about any future treatments that could take place there at this clinic. I believe that Northwood Road is one of the most desirable neighborhoods in town, and I do firmly believe that this facility being placed at this property will not only affect those folks, but will also affect others here, possibly, you know, the liquor store, the hair salons, the other people that I have, you know, that I know that own businesses in that area. I think it's totally wrong. And there's lots of other places that it could be in the town. And I believe that, it should be placed somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
No hands up at the moment.
Okay. How about last call to those who are watching to speak? No one else, Dave?
Yep, there's one more hand up.
Okay.
Balkan, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, this is Colleen Balkan again, 20 Northwood. If there's any concern about people walking through the path through the parking lot, then I'm definitely opposed to this because we've been using that for 20 years. And it's an old farm road that leads through our property. It's this big wide path that brings you right to the parking lot. And if you guys, the property, there's a rock wall that separates the parking lot from the buildings. That, that's where this old farm road kind of went along that rock wall out to basically right out to 80. So yeah, that's just something that's been an appealing thing in the neighborhood and would definitely impact our lives a lot if there was any concern with people walking through there. Thanks.
Thank you for that. You understand that's beyond our purview.
Yeah.
Anyone who happens to own that property could allow it to continue or stop it from happening. I guess there's, adverse possession and all that other stuff that comes into play, but I don't know. But your point is understood. Any others with their hands up?
No, not right now.
Okay. Any questions from the commission members related to the questions that were asked or the positions that were taken, I should say? No? Okay, well, I think at this stage, what I would like to do is turn it over to Katie and her client for closing remarks and any rebuttal to some of the comments that were made.
I wanted to say thank you very much for allowing all of us, including the neighbors and all of the other folks, to cite in their concerns. They're of value. I know that my client can certainly speak to why this location is desirable to him. But I think that I have submitted memo with the exhibits to your commission for consideration. We have put forward an expert who has answered all the questions that you have asked. And certainly I recognize, and I think I submitted this when I made a statement to you, that your commission does have the power to tailor this special exception permit with conditions. And if those would work towards alleviating some of the concerns that I'm hearing most expressed, that what is to stop my client from further expanding this business into perhaps a methadone clinic. Certainly we don't object to that. Again, he's just looking to utilize this facility in a way that is consistent with his current use. He certainly has a right as a business owner to do that, and is trying to work cooperatively and hopes to work cooperatively with the community towards providing this service. We certainly are at a time right now where I think we're all feeling what's happening in the world, and certainly before, people were in need of services towards substance and abuse and their recovery. And I think it's very important for your commission to consider that Madison and our community is not beyond that. And there are many people in need of these services, and we have a wonderful person who is already established in town who would like to continue course and utilize this particular facility towards that same end. So I just want to let Dr. Mike speak for himself. I think that's important, but I wanted to thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thanks,
Kate. Ron, is it okay if I make a comment?
Yes, certainly.
A couple of things. The placement of the offices in that location was after an exhaustive search where the offices would be retreat-like, where the clients coming in would have privacy, where there would be a sense of calm and peacefulness. I do a lot of work with nature. And so that environment is what called me to that particular location. As far as expanding the building into becoming more of a medical clinic, I have not been involved in that kind of work, and I have no intention of being part of that work. In fact, doing something like that would actually damage my business and reputation with my clientele. So the idea of worrying about what might develop, I don't have any interest in that. And if that wanted to be something that we had to come, you put some kind of caveat on the proposal so that we have to come back in the event that we look for that other license. I have no problem with that because we have no intention of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Ron.
Anything else, Katie? Anything
No,
from
thank you.
Thank you. Anything from the commission? Okay. Now we've reached the point where we may consider, and I would that's for any discussion necessary about closing the public hearing. Anybody wish to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Tom.
That was Tom Berlin. A little muted, but Tom.
I'll second.
Seconded by
John Mathers.
Thank you, John. Now, what that means for those viewing, closing the public hearing only means that we can no longer solicit any information from the applicant, from anybody for that matter. From here on, we will talk amongst ourselves, but it's in public. So closing it doesn't mean it's closed to you. You can continue. So that said, normally I start calling on people randomly, and I think maybe tonight might be better to ask if anybody wishes to kind of give their assessment as to what they feel, or an opinion of where this thing might stand in their mind at the moment. I see Tom has his hand up. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, Ron, I do, and just a couple of statements, and then I'm going to state where my thinking's been. First and foremost, I think this world would be a heck of a lot better place if we could all destigmatize mental health treatment, addiction treatments, et cetera. So I think it's a service that the world needs, the country needs, and I do know Madison needs it as well. So that's one. I think as I considered this and did my research, did my thinking, and you look up clinic and you look up what does clinic mean in Madison, right? And where do you go to define that? I think words matter, context matters. So where I came down on what's allowable in that property based on the special exception rules, because the word clinic was grouped with private hospital sanatorium, which are medical facilities, medical treatments, I believe the clinic is grouped within that, in that the outpatient clinic, medical definition in the zoning regs is an appropriate interpretation of that. So to the degree that this facility does not provide walk-in immediate care, does not provide medical treatment, I believe it's an allowable use. I certainly understand the concerns of the neighbors, and those concerns would be valid whether this was downtown Madison, whether it was next to a trailer park somewhere. So I get those concerns. I absolutely do. But I think I would probably be in favor of this as long as we make sure that we put the right restrictions on this, such as no medical treatment. Because as soon as you have medical treatment, it falls into a non-permitted use, right? So we can put words in here to cap the usage, but it's going to be a little redundant because it's not an allowable use to have medical treatment at that facility. So, I'd be in favor as long as we came to an agreement on acceptable hours of operations, understanding that clients would have to have evening hours because people do work. And as long as there's no drug therapies, no prescribing of medication out of that facility, or no medical treatment, I would be in support of it. So, thanks, Ryan.
Anybody else wish to share their thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, is this during the motion to close the public hearing, or is this after?
Excuse me. I didn't call for a vote to close the public
We
hearing.
did.
So I apologize for that. All in favor of closing the public hearing a little while ago?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Ron, ditto.
Ron, did you have, Ron, did you have a follow-up, or I see John Mathers has his hands up if not?
Yeah, I did. Well, I can talk or anybody.
Go ahead, John.
I came to the same conclusion the prior commissioner did. I'm convinced that you look at the definition of a medical clinic in Madison, this does not fit that definition. It fits the definition of a medical office. And I know it was an interesting argument to make the use of clinic at the state level, but I think we have to apply the local rules and regulations. So I'm satisfied it's not a clinic within those regulations. As the issue of property values has come up quite a bit, and I guess my take on that is from all the evidence that we have, apparently this facility, this residence has never been used residentially. It faces a state highway. It does back up to a couple of lots of a beautiful residential subdivision. But that subdivision itself is at the intersection of two state highways. And across the street from this property is a pretty good sized shopping center. I think testimony by the residents is that the use of this property has been an issue for years, if not decades. Mr. Wagner said that in the transfer of the property. So it's always been a running issue in that community about how this property might be used, as I understand it, most recently for a school. So as far as property values go, I just have to accept my conclusion is that the market has already resolved that the property values of that subdivision takes into account that there's this property here that's been an issue for years, if not decades, and everybody knows it. But I also totally agree with the prior commissioner. We can make some very good stipulations, conditions that it's not a methadone facility. Any effort to go back to get any other licenses to expand the use, they then must come back and get a special use permit. So I think it's a fitting use for that property, and I'm not opposed to it.
John Mathers, I think you had your hand up, but I'm not sure. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification to make sure I understand. We are not entertaining a zoning change tonight.
Correct.
This is just, we're trying to determine whether this proposal fits into the existing zone.
Yep,
And,
existing zones existing, right? Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make that point because I saw in several of the a few of the comments and some of the letters that I've written that people are opposed to a zoning change. So I just want to make sure that I understood and everyone else understands that we're not entertaining a zoning change. Thank you.
As usual, John, you're spot on. Anybody else wish to?
Jim Madison.
Yes, Jim.
And thank you, Ron. Thanks, Dave. I think I'm going to take a little bit different view of this. One of the reasons that we do a special exception hearing is that one of the considerations of a special exception is that it does not do harm to the surrounding uses. That's a definition. And this is a rural residential area. I think where I am is because it's a public hearing, because of the no harm to surrounding uses, I really have to listen to the residents in this residential district that are opposed to this facility. I'm not so certain that I'm fully convinced that it's not in some form a clinic. I go back to last 2 weeks ago where I brought up the fact that the term clinician had been used several times by Dr. Hinckley in describing the folks that would be working there. So I think that's still a little bit on the wire. I'm not certain that this really is what I have in mind for an office, certainly not a dentist office, that kind of thing. So in my case, I'm listening to the residents who are quite opposed to it. So that's likely gives you an indication where I'm going to come down on this. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Next, anybody willing to volunteer themselves before I start throwing darts at the screen? Nobody wants to raise their hand? Joel, I called you on you last week, so I'll move you into the middle this week. What are your thoughts?
So you're no longer blocking my image from your screen. Is that what you're telling me, Ron?
No. I'm on my iPad and I only get like 6 members. So I'll slide over. That's you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple things, and I think I'm falling along the same lines as John and Tom. I struggle with the concept of harm to the community. It's, even at the state level, everything I've seen that defines a clinic has a medical connotation to it, or very expressly stated medical uses that are associated with it. Similar to Tom, I recognize that there are probably very few neighborhoods in Madison without someone that might be in need of these services. And like Tom, I'm disappointed about the demonization of the clientele. It too closely mirrors the intolerance that is becoming much too common in our society. I think Dr. Hinckley has done while I totally understand where the neighbors are talking about his lack of decisive terminology. I understand that, but I also feel like I understand when he says what his intended use is, that's what it is. His CON application talks about there's no bed, there's no medical care going on in the facility. And like Tom and John, I think that there's a lot we can do with the jurisdiction that we have to put conditions on this application that box in what Dr. Hinckley is saying. Probably does no harm to him because it boxes in what he's saying, and that if there was a change in use from what is in the application, we could hang a condition on it that says they have to come back and do a modification to this permit, and that would be subject to a public hearing. The debate about the clinic, I think I've touched on that. It's I've not seen anything that indicates that a clinic is anything other than medical, veterinary, or dental. And Dr. Hinckley is not an MD. So I don't have very many concerns whether this fits into the regs as a medical office or a medical clinic. I believe, like John and Tom, that it is a medical office. And that's all I have to say about that.
If I may really quickly interject, the position that Joel was supporting was actually Ron and Tom. I did not
Sorry,
make that
sorry.
comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Ron and Tom.
Not that I necessarily disagree with that position, but just for the record, I want to make sure that it was Ron and Tom that were that had made those comments that Joel was referring to. Thank
Too
you.
many on.
Fair enough. Sorry, John.
Ron, can I respond to something that Joel brought up?
Sure.
And that is that I just wanted to clarify that my view of harm to the surrounding uses is not the nature of the clientele who will be coming there, not that at all. It's the fact that it's the harm to the mindset of the residents who are the neighbors who have expressed their concerns and feelings and objections to this. So it's really that, Joel. It's not my view of the nature of the clients being in that facility. It's the concern of the neighboring residents that I'm thinking of.
No, I didn't take it that way, Jim. My comment in that lane or that vein was that because of how this facility is going to be used, I struggle with the concept that it is somehow harming the neighborhood. This is everything that's been described is something that's quite discreet and in a very structured and somewhat regimented environment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim and Joel. And for the record, that was Ron Bodenson who spoke.
Yeah.
We have two Rons on tonight. Elliot, what do you think? Where are you coming from?
I don't know. I think I'm leaning more in the direction to echo Jim's feelings on the facility. I mean, I could definitely appreciate the need for such a facility. Just not certain that it should be in a residential zone by special exception. I think it would be better suited somewhere where it's permitted by right. But if we were to put some very strict, I guess, so that basically it cannot be expanded on and kept to basically, limited it to what they're proposing at this point. I think I could potentially be okay with it, but my initial thought was that I thought it should be somewhere that's not a residential zone.
Thank you, Elliot. Giselle, how about you? Where are you on this?
So for me, it's pretty clear cut. It's simple. I'm leaning towards being opposed to this. Although I think that the idea and the need is warranted. It's a great idea. It's a service that we need. I'm opposed to the location. Us having to make the decision under special exception is something that I do oppose. I listen to the residents, the neighbors, and all of their comments. And I have to agree. In the beginning, when Katie and Dr. Hinckley spoke, I believe they mentioned something towards the fact that nearby churches, we may give the same type of treatment to patients, neighbors in a church. And I get that. I agree, but it is a church. That's the main use of it. So we're not comparing apples to apples. I also agree that this should be put in a different location and not in a residential area. That's my position.
Thank you, Joe. Joe?
Hi, sorry, I dropped out there. I had a little internet connection issue. So listening to all of the neighbors' concerns, I too am a neighbor in very close proximity to there. I agree with many of the previous commissioners' statements in that I believe there's a very large stigma associated with this facility that ought not be. You know, this property abuts very closely a bunch of residential properties, although it does not abut any residential property. It abuts Madison Land Conservation Trust property. But I understand the concern. I, however, have had the unique situation of working in professional buildings for many, many years where facilities much like this, and maybe even more intensive than this, coexisted, and have had the opportunity to see zero problems. You know, people come and people go. People come to facilities like this to get help with mental health or addiction issues. And I think there should be more facilities like this at our disposal for residents of towns. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I do think it fits the use. I do not think it is a medical clinic as such, as other people have defined a medical clinic. I think it's more of a counseling center, which makes it not a whole lot different than the dentist office next door, in my opinion. And I am in favor of this application.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
I guess it's my turn to share my thoughts. Well, first off, we have a public hearing for a reason, and that is to solicit the public's opinion. They have clearly stated how they feel about it. And in addition, it's the public happens to be many of the people who surround it, which ties back, at least in my mind, to some of the comments Jim made. I also looked to the definition of the word clinic. And by all I can determine, and it is like, what's the difference between a bar, a tavern, and a bar and grill? I mean, you can split hairs on it. But any definition that I see that relates to the word clinic includes exactly the type of use, for all intents and purposes, is what's being proposed here. And we don't permit that. So, you know, on that basis, primarily, and that's why we're here, is to make that differentiation, I think, at least in the most part. You know, agree with Jim and a couple of others that a clinic at this location is inappropriate. I understand some of the concerns of the neighbors, and there has been, and I'm not talking about the neighbors or anybody, but there's been an undercurrent of that Joel touched on. But I don't think that doesn't cloud my vision one way or the other. It shouldn't. It's just that in my mind, a clinic, this is close to being a poster child of one. And for that reason, I would tend to, and I'd like to carry on the discussion. I would have to be convinced that I'm wrong. Anybody else care to discuss this at all?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Ron Bodenson, the thing is that we have a definition of an outpatient clinic, and it's a facility which provides services to patients who present non-life-threatening problems, but who need or want convenient, immediate medical attention. Such facility may be open 24 hours a day. In another section, 5G, it connects the clinic with a hospital or sanatorium. And then you read what a physician's office is, non-retail, you just can't walk in and buy services. of one or more healthcare providers providing the treatment or examination of patients solely on an outpatient basis. And then this is by appointment only. A clinic is walk-in. So I think we got to be careful, and maybe we need a legal opinion on this about whether this is a clinic or not. But relying on what our definitions are in the zoning statute, it just doesn't seem to rise to the level of what we call a clinic.
Thank you for that. I would just say, when you look at, a medical office, doctor's office, and following that, the definitions and the term, when you add a second doctor, it technically becomes a clinic.
Well, not under the,
I don't
not
think
under the definition. One or more healthcare
I'm
providers.
telling you that if you go to the dictionary, look at the word clinic or medical clinic, I don't think that what happens to be an addition of an outpatient clinic, was pointed out by Attorney Rickman, is the only definition we have to work on. And I appreciate your point. And I hope you can appreciate where I'm coming from.
Sure.
That I don't think, probably both of us are not right and both of us are not wrong. It falls maybe a little bit in the middle. Certainly gray, but that's my opinion. And I respect yours.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything to add, subtract, divide?
Well, I would offer, based on the dialogue between you two gentlemen, that I think we've already had a couple legal opinions on it, and they differ. So what would a third bring about? I don't know. Then you start tallying, how many lawyers say yes, how many lawyers say no. Nothing, no offense intended whatsoever to the attorneys on the call. And Ron, I would say that you can look in the Webster's dictionary, or you could look to our own zoning regulations. I would probably err toward the zoning regulations in considering this application.
Well said. Thanks, Joe. And I think when someone mentioned the term getting a legal opinion, that would be from a like town council, an uninvolved party, because certainly the arguments presented by Attorney Rickman and Katie were reasonable and well said. But obviously,
yeah, I know. I was just having fun with that comment.
Pardon?
I was just having fun with Ron's comment.
Hey, Ron.
Yes, Tom.
So if we were to put some conditions on this, and let me throw out a couple. Don't know if they're the right ones, but and I think it's important to sort of anticipate some of the concerns and address some of the concerns that the neighbors had, and see if this makes anybody feel any different. And we can wordsmith this, but what if we stipulated in the use that it's non-residential, so that's on record. That can never be a residential facility. That there is no parking overnight. The hours of operation, the facility has to close, or the office has to close by 9 p.m. No medical treatment, no drug therapies, and no prescribing of drugs. If we put those types of conditions on this, does that alleviate anybody's concern?
Well, Tom, it doesn't alleviate mine, because I don't believe that itself would change the opinion of the folks that we've heard from, the public that has spoken against this.
Mm-hmm.
Since I came down in Jim's corner, I'll comment and say that if this were to be approved, I think, Tom, you bring up some valid points, and there should be possibly a considerable number of restrictions placed on it. Not just because of what came out tonight, But at some point in the future, Dr. Hinckley may retire, sell the practice, sell the business, a new owner takes over and, you know, has a different view of the world in terms of methadone, for example, or whatever it may be. So if this was happened to be voted on and approved, I would, for one, like to see, you know, a rather extensive list of practical, makes sense, controllable conditions on it to protect everybody. But that doesn't change at this moment my position on the approval.
Could those conditions be directly linked to the statement of use? In other words, if there in the future were ever a change, a material change in the use of the practice, other than what was in the original statement of use, that would have to come back before approval?
Yes, that would be a possibility.
Yeah.
You know, the problem, and I'm not saying it's a problem, the issue all over is that, you know, many times homeowners or, you know, add a deck without a building permit, do all sorts of things without the proper approvals. No one knows about it, no harm, no foul, so to speak, but it is a foul. So that's something that always is a consideration, but doesn't change the fact that these conditions would stand and be enforceable. And I think that would be important to everybody's benefit if it were approved. So anybody have any other thoughts to add? Coming to the time to have a motion to be made and see how we feel.
Ron, I would be in agreement with your thought as far as putting a list of stipulations together in as a caveat to approval.
Dave, what are your thoughts? We've had legal opinion pop up and a couple of things. What's your advice to the commission?
Well, I think I would agree with the discussion about getting a legal opinion. I think that would potentially be helpful. I would suggest that if we are to consider conditions of approval, that you might have a dialogue and allow me to draft those up, you know, thoughtfully rather than just doing it over this one evening. And then you guys could further deliberate on those conditions at a subsequent meeting. I just, you know, I think that's a slightly complex set of conditions to draft, just considering licensure requirements and everything else. And I wouldn't want to rush that process if that's the direction the commission chooses to go. I think that's my general advice to you. It seems I didn't do a tally, but it seems to be a bit of a split at this moment. So I think we should be thoughtful about how we proceed.
How do the rest of the commission feel about Dave's suggestion? Make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah, I fully support that. There's a reason why we have a town attorney, and you know it's referencing our own regulations. So it'd be good if we got an interpretation there.
Yeah,
and I think I totally agree that we shouldn't rush into the conditions.
Yeah, and so Ron, how would and Dave, how would that happen? Would we make a motion with some suggested conditions that are then we table it and we don't vote on it, but we get the town attorney to weigh in on those conditions? Because I'd hate to lose the thought process that we have right now. Let's give the town attorney, if that's where we're going, something to react to.
You know, I think that's a good suggestion, Tom. I think if I was to go to the attorney with a baseline request of giving us kind of a legal opinion on this matter, and if he felt that the application was an approvable application in his legal opinion, I would then ask him to, you know, maybe assist me in drafting conditions of approval based on whatever recommendations you guys made tonight. I think that would be how I would probably proceed. So I wrote down some of the things you just mentioned, Tom, and obviously these are recorded, so I can certainly provide our attorneys the ability to watch these meetings and, you know, decipher them in a little bit more detail and all of the documents. But if you have any other thoughts, let's get them on paper now, and I can communicate those.
I think, you know, my thought is that if we're going to the town attorney, I agree with you, Dave. I'm not quite sure what Tom meant, but I think we might consider waiting till we get input from the town attorney, and using that information to help us decide how we want to vote. So I, for one, would like to see, you know, the vote postponed until we have the feedback from the town attorney. Certainly everything is fresh in our mind. We know how we feel. And in 2 weeks, in a position to make the motion, go with the approval or the denial that makes the conditions unnecessary. But have the input from the town attorney at the same time to help us with that decision in case we've somehow gone off one way or the other. Is that agreeable?
Good idea.
It is to me.
Huh?
Yeah, it is to me because Dave's got, you know, nice suggested conditions. I wouldn't think of any more.
And it's okay by me. I don't think there's not going to be anything that's going to come out of that that's going to change my mind right now.
I'd like to do it that way, but only if you guys agree.
Mr. Chairman,
I
I think
do.
it's a good idea because no one wants to vote in favor of this if it turns out that it's really a clinic and we shouldn't have allowed it. So we might as well get that opinion and be working on proposed stipulations in the event it turns out the opinion is it's not a clinic.
But I think now we're bringing up two different things. So what will the attorney be asked, David? What, in your view, will you be asking the attorney? Tom is saying, have him look at a list of conditions that we put on it.
Well, I'm looking
No,
at
actually, Jim, what I was saying is, if we're going to get a legal opinion, right? And I think the first thing is it an allowable use? That's the first thing that the town attorney would probably weigh in on. Now,
Okay.
chances are 50-50 because, Jim, let me finish. It's 50-50 because you could ask any of the attorneys here and they'll parse it one way or the other. And so who knows how that's going to fall in? Because quite honestly, I don't think that there's a one definition of what a clinic is. And then the other piece is if he comes back and says yes, it's allowable. Now, if he says no, then probably it's a moot point because we're going to follow the town attorney's advice, right? So if it's not an allowable use, it's not an allowable use. Number two, if he says it is an allowable use because it's not really a clinic by definition, I would like him to come back with some proposed language so we can vote on this, and let Dr. Hinckley either proceed or move on to someplace else without dragging this on any further. But at least we'd have something that we can vote on that's coherent and it makes legal sense.
I'm inclined to agree with Tom because this word, we're all hung up on this word clinic. And, the client or the applicant says it ain't a clinic. Our statement of use says it's not a clinic, but we're required to have a psychiatric outpatient clinic license in order to operate this business. So being required to get a psychiatric outpatient clinic, does that define your business as a clinic or not? And that may be the town attorney's job to figure out whether that is or is not. And if it is a clinic, then the zoning doesn't permit it. But if it's not a clinic, we still have the issue with the neighbors. And to Jim Madison's point, this is not a welcome applicant as far as these neighbors are concerned. And I think Dr. Hinckley has to consider that and consider whether this location is important enough for him that he's willing to walk into that environment. Are the neighbors' fears, are they real? I mean, they certainly seem real. If I were a neighbor, I'd probably have a lot of the same concern. Or are they fear of the unknown, fear of what it might be? And I will agree that not in tonight's meeting, but in the previous meeting, I don't think Dr. Hinckley did a good job giving definitive answers. His answers were very vague and left questions in my mind. What exactly was up? Tonight, I feel a little bit better what he's saying and what he says he will and will not do. And so based on what he says he will and will not do, I don't think he would be opposed to accepting conditions on any approval that we do. So I'm on the fence on this, but I'm inclined to go along with Ron's recommendation and punting this to the town attorney for now.
Thank you, John and Tom. And to clarify, I don't know, punting is an appropriate term, but on the other hand, it may not be appropriate.
Sorry.
No, but we're looking to, and I wouldn't expect the town attorney to be able to vote, so to speak. But what I would like to do is we had two very
bad terms, sorry.
Well presented positions from each side on the issue of clinic office. We have our zoning regulations that obviously come into play on this, and to solicit the input of the town attorney's office to what their assessment of the situation is, without telling how to vote or make a conclusion, I think would be helpful. And possibly change minds one way or the other. And I think that's part of our due diligence. So if everybody agrees, I'd like to table it till the, 25th?
I'd make a motion to table it till the 25th.
I'll second that.
And we'll go from there.
And Ron, just to be clear, just so the people on the attendees understand, the public hearing is closed. So we can't accept any more input from either the applicant or the residents or Attorney Rickman or anything. So this is just me reaching out to the town attorney and getting advice for the commission. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that part of it.
And cannot and will not be talking amongst ourselves. Any further patients will take place 2 weeks from tonight, as is always the case, if that's anybody's concerns.
And also, I think it might be beneficial, especially since there's no commute required. If the town attorney is available to attend our next meeting, I'll ask him to attend as well. I think that might be helpful.
That's a great idea. So with that, I'm sorry to leave a lot of people in suspense, but there's a right way of doing this. As I think everybody agrees, we're trying to do the right thing the right way. And I appreciate who's spoken tonight, watching tonight, for their participation, their questions, and they're all well taken. And it's important to receive that input, no matter how the vote turns out. And so I thank you for that participation. And to both attorneys and to Dr. Hinckley, thank you for all your time and effort. So that's all I have to say.
We have a motion on the table.
Well, possibly.
Yeah, there's a motion and a second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. It's tabled for our next meeting on the 25th, I believe, 7 p.m.
Is it the 25th or the 18th?
18th.
Oh, excuse me, 18th, I'm sorry.
18th, yeah.
Thank you. So that's it for this part of it. We have another couple items to discuss. That's all for the, thanks though, and thanks to all who called in. You don't have to leave us, but all we have left are to go over the minute of the planning meeting on March 7th. Elliot, do you have those handy?
I have the minutes for March 7th. I do not have the minutes for March 21st.
May 21st?
Or May 21st, I'm sorry. So I have the planning minutes for May 7th, members present, Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, Berlin, Manofsky, Mathers, Miller. Alternates present, Peter Ruse. Entertain a motion.
I move we accept the minutes as written.
I'll second. Second.
Any discussions or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Approved.
Okay. Has everybody seen the minutes from the meeting on the 21st? Other than Elliot, of course. Nobody?
Can't say I have, no.
All right, why don't we just table those approvals till next meeting, Ron?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. So we'll hold off until that meeting, and that takes care of that part of the business. The next are the chairman's comments. I think I've probably already spoken enough tonight. I've certainly listened a lot, but I do want to thank everybody. The past two meetings have been long and quite a great deal of focus and thought. And I know I appreciate it. I know, the folks who are involved hopefully appreciate it. And hats off to you for your hard work. Dave, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add tonight.
Okay. So with that, I will let somebody have something to say?
Yeah, I had a question, Dave. Did the court reporter transcribe, or will she just work off the record?
I'm not sure. I see her on here, still on, but her phone is muted and her video is muted, so I'll find out. So this is being broadcast live on YouTube right now, so I sent her that link, so she might have been watching it on YouTube.
All right.
But we can give her this video if she was unable to access that.
And she's the best.
Sure is.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.